Welcome to the deep dive. It's really great to have you with us today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really looking forward to getting into this one.
We are taking on a mission today that it feels incredibly urgent for pretty much anyone navigating the modern workplace. Whether you were managing a team in a corporate office or, running a hospital floor or steering a tech firm.
Absolutely. Because we're exploring Dr. Jonathan H. Westover's research on employee-centered AI implementation,
Mhm.
or ECAII, as it's called.
Right. And to really do this topic justice, we're going to tear into this research from two very distinct vantage points. From my end, working in organizational strategy and HR, I'm looking at the boots on the ground operational reality. Like, how do leadership teams actually roll this technology out without destroying employee morale or entirely breaking the company culture?
And from my perspective in organizational psychology, I'm analyzing the cognitive and behavioral fallout. We need to look at what happens to a person's sense of self-worth, their motivation, and their cognitive load when their newest collaborator is a highly advanced algorithm.
Because adopting AI is a profoundly human shift. It is nothing like upgrading from, paper filing cabinets to digital spreadsheets.
No, not at all. It's a fundamental change process.
So here is the roadmap for you today. We are going straight into why AI represents a completely new frontier of automation. We'll look at how it directly threatens and can actually save our professional identities. And finally, we will break down the three practical pillars that organizations have to build to survive this shift.
It's a complex journey, moving
Yeah.
from understanding a very real psychological threat to actually implementing structural organizational solutions.
Okay, let's unpack this. We spent decades adjusting to physical automation. We all understand the concept of a robotic arm on a factory floor taking over routine manual labor.
Right, the classic assembly line robot.
Exactly. But Westover's research highlights that AI crossing the threshold into cognitive work, things like natural language processing, predictive modeling, complex judgment, it's a completely different psychological earthquake for the workforce.
The distinction between manual and cognitive automation is really where the psychological unraveling begins for a lot of employees. When an algorithm starts generating credit approval decisions or outputting medical diagnoses, drafting performance evaluations, it completely redistributes decision-making authority.
Because historically, those cognitive tasks were the exclusive domain of human expertise.
Yes, that expertise was the very definition of a knowledge worker's value. And suddenly, you are sharing that intellectual space with a machine.
But wait, if I have been doing, say, corporate risk assessments for 10 years, and a new software dashboard tells me how to evaluate my clients, I don't just get annoyed. You're saying I actually lose my sense of authority.
You do, largely because of how these systems are actually built. The research refers to Jenna Burrell's concept of opacity by design. We often just call it the black box challenge.
Right, the black box, because we can't see inside it.
Exactly. Deep learning models aren't just confusing to the average user. Their internal pathways are often inscrutable, even to the software engineers who designed them. You feed in massive amounts of data, and you get a highly sophisticated, incredibly confident output.
Yeah.
But the exact logic the algorithm used to get there,
Remains totally hidden.
it remains hidden, yes.
It's like having a genius colleague who drops the perfect, most comprehensive answer on your desk, but absolutely refuses to show their work. And if you ask them how they calculated it, they just blink at you in binary. From an operational standpoint, you just have to blindly trust them.
And that forced trust leads to a really dangerous psychological trap that researchers call a shift in epistemic authority.
Epistemic authority.
Yeah, because the algorithm is viewed as objective, devoid of human fatigue, driven by millions of data points. Human workers begin to subconsciously assume it is infallible. Instead of actively collaborating with the AI, they fall into a state of passive deference.
But if you are a seasoned professional, wouldn't you naturally push back if a machine gave you a weird or counterintuitive answer? Like, why would a veteran employee just defer?
I mean, you would hope they would push back. But the psychological weight of the machine's perceived objectivity is heavy. If you're working alongside a black box that leadership has touted as the ultimate analytical tool, questioning it feels like a massive professional risk.
Oh, I see. If the machine is supposed to be perfect, disagreeing with it makes you look like the bottleneck.
Precisely. Employees stop applying their own hard-won judgment. Over time, that passive deference results in a profound degradation of human agency. The employee stops feeling like a domain expert and starts feeling like a glorified button pusher.
Which brings us to a massive operational crisis. If you have a workforce of highly paid experts who feel like glorified button pushers, you are going to see engagement absolutely plummet. The research calls this the threat to work meaningfulness.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we can look at how organizational psychology actually defines that meaningfulness. Think about the classic Job characteristics model by Hackman and Oldham.
Right, meaningful work isn't just some vague concept.
Exactly, it relies on very specific pillars. Think about that deeply satisfying feeling of owning a complex project from the initial brainstorm all the way to the final presentation that is task identity, or knowing your specific expertise solved a problem nobody else could. That is skill variety and task significance.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, in your actual career? Imagine you're a mid-level financial analyst. You spend years honing your ability to spot subtle market trends. If an AI system is suddenly deployed to handle the most cognitively demanding complex trend analysis, it is stripping away your skill variety.
And when you were just proofreading the AI's final report, your task identity is completely fractured. The very tasks that form the core of your professional pride are just gone.
The psychological toll of that fracturing has to be severe.
It is. Westover's research shows this leads directly to diminished self-worth and really high anxiety over skill obsolescence. Employees develop this constant, humming fear that they are becoming entirely irrelevant to the market. They suffer from a fragmented sense of purpose, which is basically the fastest track to profound burnout.
From a management perspective, that is a total nightmare. You absolutely cannot run a successful company with a workforce of deeply depressed, anxious employees who are terrified of their own laptops. So how do leadership teams actually fix this?
The most crucial takeaway from this research is recognizing that the solution to this identity crisis is structural, not technical. You cannot write better code to cure employee burnout. Organizations have to facilitate a dynamic psychological process called sense-making.
Sense-making. It sounds a bit abstract. How does that actually play out in a corporate environment?
It's the active process where an organization provides the frameworks and support so that when AI takes over a legacy task, the employee is guided to reconstruct their purpose. They need leadership to help them find new value in their evolving role, making sense of who they are and what their unique human contribution is in this new landscape.
And facilitating that sense-making is where the Employee-Centered AI Implementation Framework, ECAII, comes in. Westover outlines 3 non-negotiable pillars to make this happen. Let's look at the first one, transparent communication. Now, operationally, a lot of companies think transparent communication is sending a company-wide email on a Friday afternoon that says, hey, everyone, we bought a new AI platform. Mandatory training is Tuesday.
A post-implementation memo like that is practically a hostile act in the context of cognitive automation.
It is a recipe for instant resentment. According to the framework, true transparent communication requires proactive disclosure. You have to bring the employees into the loop early, well before the system is fully baked or rolled out. It also requires technical translation.
Right, explaining the AI without confusing jargon.
Exactly. Leadership has to explain what the AI actually does without burying people in IT speak, but also without talking down to them.
And the third requirement of transparent communication is perhaps the most psychologically vital. Leadership must explicitly acknowledge the AI's limitations and the reality of algorithmic errors.
Getting a tech vendor or a CEO to admit their multi-million-dollar software is flawed is incredibly difficult. Why is that specific admission so important?
Because by actively detailing the system's limitations, you immediately neutralize that epistemic authority we discussed.
Yeah.
You are sending a clear psychological signal to the employee. This machine is not an infallible oracle. It has blind spots, it will make mistakes, and that is exactly why your human judgment remains critical.
It calibrates their trust appropriately.
Yes, so they don't fall into passive deference.
The research provides a fantastic real-world example of this from a major technology company. They were preparing to integrate advanced AI-powered coding assistance tools into their software developers' daily workflows. Now, software engineers take immense pride in their code. Telling them an AI is going to write their syntax could easily be perceived as an existential threat to their value.
The potential threat to their task, significance in that scenario, is astronomical. If the AI writes the code, what is the developer actually doing?
Exactly. So the company avoided the Friday memo entirely and used a brilliant multi-tiered communication strategy. At the executive level, the messaging relentlessly framed the AI as augmentation rather than replacement. It was positioned as a superpowered calculator to make them faster, not a junior developer gunning for their jobs.
That framing is essential.
But they didn't stop at executive messaging. They held specific team briefings to translate the high-level strategy into actual daily workflow impacts.
They bridge the gap between corporate strategy and daily reality.
And my favorite operational tactic, they establish ongoing open office hours with the internal AI specialists. If a developer felt anxious about a new feature or found a recurring error in the AI's output, they didn't have to submit some anonymous IT ticket. They could walk into a room and speak directly with the people who built the tool.
The psychological safety generated by those open office hours is remarkable. It creates a dedicated space where professional anxiety can be voiced, validated, and addressed rationally.
And it worked, didn't it?
The results of that transparency are undeniable. The developers transitioned from viewing the AI as a threat to viewing it as a massive productivity enhancer. The AI handled the tedious, routine coding syntax, which freed the human developers to elevate their focus to complex system architecture and creative problem solving. They successfully reconstructed their work meaningfulness.
Which is a huge operational win. But transparent communication is really only the first step. If leadership is just broadcasting information, employees still feel like things are happening to them rather than with them. Here's where it gets really interesting. The second pillar of ECAII is meaningful consultation.
Yes, consultation is critical.
This requires actively giving employees a genuine voice in the decisions that affect their workflows. We are talking about having frontline workers participate in the design phase, providing structured feedback during pilot programs, and even holding seats on AI governance committees.
From a psychological standpoint, meaningful consultation is incredibly powerful because it activates two major mechanisms: procedural justice and psychological ownership.
Procedural justice.
It's the fundamental human feeling that if a process is fair, inclusive, and transparent, people will generally accept the outcome, even if it drastically changes their routine. If you build the AI system with me, I will view it as a fair tool.
And psychological ownership shifts the entire dynamic. It becomes our new system, not management's new mandate. Operationally, consultation also bridges a massive knowledge asymmetry that plagues so many tech rollouts.
Knowledge asymmetry between the developers and the users.
Right. The software engineers designing the AI might understand the underlying mathematics perfectly, but the frontline employees using the tech daily possess a ground-level understanding of the messy, unwritten nuances of the actual job. System designers almost always miss those realities if they work in a vacuum.
The healthcare implementation case study in the research illustrates this perfectly. A healthcare technology manufacturer was developing AI-assisted medical imaging tools. These were algorithms designed to scan X-rays and MRIs to identify anomalies.
The stakes in that environment are astronomically high. A false positive leads to unnecessary invasive procedures, and a false negative could cost a patient their life. The black box problem is acute when you are dealing with clinical outcomes.
Which is exactly why their consultation strategy was so rigorous. They didn't just ask for feedback after the tool was built. They embedded actual radiologists and clinical technicians into the development lifecycle from day one.
That's a massive commitment.
It is. They formed multi-professional working groups. These groups would take the algorithm's preliminary outputs and review them against real historical clinical cases.
The human clinicians were literally checking the machine's homework. And through that collaborative process, they identified numerous situations where the AI's recommendations, while mathematically logical, were unhelpful, confusing, or just downright dangerous in a real-world clinical context. The clinical reality clashed with the mathematical model.
It is a masterclass in merging human clinical judgment with algorithmic scale. By actively consulting the end users, the designers were able to iterate and fix those operational flaws before the system was ever deployed on a hospital floor. But look at the psychological transformation for those clinicians.
Because they had actively trained the system and corrected its flaws, the clinicians ended up deeply trusting the AI. It was integrated into their daily routine as a collaborative advisor rather than an alien disruptive force dropped onto their desks by hospital administration.
Post-implementation satisfaction was incredibly high because they felt a profound sense of ownership over the tool's success. They maintained their epistemic authority. The AI provided an incredibly fast, data-driven second opinion, but the radiologist remained the unquestioned, ultimate expert in the room. That dynamic preserves their work meaningfulness entirely.
It is a perfect operational outcome. But to reach that level of seamless collaboration, employees actually need to know how to engage with the system safely. Integrating them into the design process builds that initial trust, but once the system is live on their desktop, trust isn't enough. They actually need to know how to push back against it. That brings us to the third and final pillar: capability building through training. As someone who has sat through countless corporate software rollouts, a 1-hour webinar showing you where the new login button is located does not count as capability building. This pillar goes miles beyond a standard user manual.
What's fascinating here is the vital distinction Westover makes between standard technical training and what he calls critical AI literacy. Technical training is simply knowing the interface, where to input the data and how to export the report.
The basic button pushing.
Right. But critical AI literacy is a much deeper, more demanding cognitive skill set. It requires teaching employees about the inherent mathematical limitations of the system. It means actively cultivating appropriate skepticism.
You are essentially teaching your workforce to actively doubt and interrogate the multi-million-dollar software you just purchased. That is a very tough operational pill for some executives to swallow. They want the tool to be perfect.
It is a difficult shift for leadership, but it is absolutely essential for long-term success. You have to train employees on exactly when and how to override the algorithm. You have to explicitly mandate through training that human judgment always maintains primacy.
Otherwise, they just defer to it.
Exactly. If you do not intentionally build critical literacy, you inevitably fall right back into that trap of passive deference we discussed earlier. You have to train people to argue with the machine.
The research highlights a global professional services firm that executed this perfectly. They were rolling out generative AI tools to their consultants to assist with heavy data analysis, advisory work, and report generation.
Consultants are another group of highly specialized knowledge workers whose entire professional identity is tied to their cognitive output and analytical rigor.
Right, so their strategy wasn't a mandatory weekend boot camp. They launched a multi-year capability building program. They obviously included technical modules to teach the interface, but they paired them with intensive critical thinking workshops.
Those workshops are where the real literacy happens.
Yes, these workshops specifically focused on the limitations of the algorithms, how they hallucinate data, where they fail to grasp nuanced client context, and the business risks of relying too heavily on automated insights. And they went a brilliant step further operationally. They established formal mentorship networks.
That mentorship aspect is a profound psychosocial support mechanism. It puts the concept of sense-making into concrete action. You pair a less experienced consultant who might be intimidated by the AI with a veteran who has already successfully integrated it into their practice.
The veteran can say, look, here's how I use the AI to do the tedious data sorting and preliminary research in 20 minutes so I can spend my actual time focusing on the high-level strategic advisory that the client actually pays me for. It physically models how to reconstruct the meaningfulness of the job.
And the outcome for that firm was remarkable. They saw a massive increase in confidence across their consulting teams. The employees significantly enhanced their project efficiency. They delivered faster, but crucially, without any degradation in the quality of their insights.
They didn't lose their edge.
Not at all. Most importantly, they sustained a deeply held belief that their human judgment, their ability to read a room and understand a client's unspoken needs, was entirely irreplaceable. The training proved to them that the AI was a powerful tool that desperately needed them, not the other way around.
It is a brilliant synthesis of operational strategy and human psychology. The transparent communication sets the stage and calms the initial panic. The meaningful consultation builds the tool correctly and fosters a culture of ownership. And the critical literacy training empowers the employee to use it safely, actively, and purposefully.
It's a complete ecosystem for change.
So, as we bring this deep dive to a close, let's summarize the clear consensus between the HR operational perspective and the organizational psychology perspective. Dr. Westover's research makes it undeniably clear. Integrating artificial intelligence is not a plug-and-play IT procurement project.
No, not even close.
The operational success or failure of AI in the workplace depends entirely on participatory, human-centered strategies. If a company wants the massive efficiency gains AI promises, they have to put in the work to help their employees navigate their changing roles and aggressively protect the meaningfulness of their daily work.
Because ultimately, the technology is only as effective as the human minds that wield it. If your human workforce is burned out, feeling alienated, and passively deferring to a black box out of fear or apathy, your organizational performance will inevitably crash, regardless of how sophisticated the algorithm is.
I want to connect this directly to you, listening right now. Think about your own workplace. Think about the massive technological transitions you are living through at this very moment. Are you being treated as a collaborative, respected partner in that change?
It's a crucial question.
Are you receiving transparent communication about the tools you use, meaningful consultation and how they are deployed, and critical training on how to challenge them? Or are you being treated as a passive subject of corporate automation? It is absolutely worth asking those questions in your next team meeting or one-on-one.
And as you reflect on your own workplace, I want to leave you with a final, somewhat provocative thought to mull over. We've spent this entire deep dive discussing how human leaders and organizations must implement human-centered strategies to thoughtfully integrate AI today. But AI models are not static. They are becoming exponentially more autonomous.
That's true. They're evolving fast.
They're increasingly capable of analyzing their own operational efficiency, identifying workflow bottlenecks, and rewriting their own processes. So what happens in 5 or 10 years when the AI becomes sophisticated enough to begin designing the organizational structures and the HR practices itself? When the algorithm is the one determining the most efficient, optimal way to roll out new systems to the human workforce? Will the AI of tomorrow be consulting us on how we feel about the change, or will we be consulting it?
Wow. That is a heavy, completely paradigm-shifting question to end on. It really forces you to look at the future of work differently. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the human side of artificial intelligence. We hope this exploration has given you a powerful new framework for understanding and navigating the changes happening in your own professional life. Keep questioning the systems around you, keep pushing for that critical literacy, and we will catch you on the next one.